Hello, hello.
Howdy, howdy.
How you doing?
I am doing excellent.
Good, good to hear it. So today we're going to be covering Jordan Peterson's Manifesto, which came out last year, and I think last September-ish, and we just haven't gotten around to it until now. I actually did just not too long ago found out that this existed, so it sounded like a good thing to cover. He's been a hot topic of conversation for several years now. I know a lot of people will kind of say he's on the decline or whatever. Like, I know his reputation has been dwindling, but nevertheless, he's wrote what is being called a conservative manifesto. And I don't know, Flowtrace, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think Jordan Peterson's fucking brain dead and a moron. I don't know. I don't want to. See, normally what I want to be like is like, oh, let's be reasonable, right? We can agree to disagree, right? You can be wrong. Everyone's wrong about something. Two very smart people can disagree. And back in the day, I feel like Jordan Peterson, did have, some decent arguments. But then he went into a medically induced coma, and I legitimately think there is a significant chance that this actually permanently fucked his brain. This guy is just like a completely different person, at least to my eyes, and ears, I guess, is technically more accurate use of the phrase. Ever since that happened, now he just seems totally deranged and lost, and I think basically almost everything that comes out of his mouth these days, aside from the most basic stuff, which I still give him credit for. I think he does have some legitimately very useful advice for self-improvement, and psychology and things like that. But anything beyond that, anything beyond, hey, if you want to get better, clean your room, work on small things, which is great advice. Anything beyond that, it's just some of the worst takes I've ever heard.
I've heard other people say that they feel like he's been kind of co-opted by the conservative mainstream ever since I think he got hired by the Daily Wire, isn't that right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and I think a lot of people have said like he seems to have lost a lot of his idiosyncratic ideas and explanations since then, and they feel like the value he's adding to that side of discourse has diminished as a result of it. But yeah. And maybe the cognitive decline thing might be real too.
Yeah, I don't know. Normally, I really don't like to do that kind of stuff because, ultimately, the argument is right or wrong.
Yeah.
Theoretically, even someone in cognitive decline could be making very succinct arguments, very correct arguments, and be totally right. But man, it is really hard to look the other way when his behavior just seems so deranged.
Well, if this is a manifesto, I'm assuming he's not just speaking off the top of his head. So hopefully it'll be some kind of
one would hope. One would hope.
Yeah, it'll be some kind of carefully prepared document where he's not going to burst into tears in the middle of it. So
the day. I mean, he is at the Daily Wire, which is just like a whole other oh my fucking god. No, it's just sorry, I'm just gonna rant a little bit.
Go for it.
Oh my god, Ben Shapiro could have been. Ben Shapiro, agree to disagree. He's conservative. I'm not conservative. You know what? We can agree to disagree, but at least he's not totally fucking crazy. And I know I'm Ben Shapiro. I know you're not ever gonna watch this, but I know Ben Shapiro isn't actually that crazy of a person. That he thinks Trump is fucking crazy. If you listen to him, he doesn't make any explicit excuses or anything like that. There's a reason why he's pulling for DeSantis, because he's one of these Republicans that knows that Trump is completely deranged and totally off the rails, but is biding his time. But at a certain point, bro, you become part of the problem. I just wonder in 30 years when Ben Shapiro looks back on the absolute insanity that's ripping apart the Republican Party, and he thinks, oh, why did this happen? Why did all the Republicans become so crazy? Ben, it was because of you and people like you that didn't stand up and be like, hey guys, Trump is completely fucking insane. Hey guys, these Trump indictments are real. Oh my god, he went to Harvard Law. Ben Shapiro went to Harvard Law, and he's talking about how the indictment is a double standard, the document indictment for Trump is a double standard because of Hillary Clinton, and not mentioning intent. Intent is one of the most important parts of that charge. But Harvard Law graduate just happens to leave out the fact that the intent to your mens rea, that's actually a really important part of how we quantify crimes. Oops, I guess the Harvard Law student just forgot that. No, he is intentionally trying to placate his audience, and it's so sad. It's just such a fucking sad, pathetic thing. Like Ben Shapiro's kind of he's like sitting on the sidelines, like, man, why are Republicans so crazy? And then you look at like what his co-host that he hires on the Daily Wire are doing, and like they're the craziest people around. Oh my god, it's such a wasted opportunity, and it is like the epitome of like what is tearing apart the Republican Party right now. But whatever, you dig your own grave, and now you get to sit in it. So eat shit.
It's so hard to know like how much dishonesty to ascribe to a person who's saying something that they ought to know better, because like motivated reasoning is a powerful drug too.
Yeah,
so like
it is. I don't know. I used to really be firmly on the side where it's like, man, I think Ben Shapiro is wrong here. I think he's having this effect, but I wonder, how much of it does how much of Ben Shapiro is he thinking about, he needs to be the sane person, right? He needs to be the sane voice that's staying there. But at a certain point, bro, it's like, oh man, I don't know if you've seen Battlestar Galactica. Great show. But at a certain point, it's like when you're working in like, this is going to be a hyperbolic example, and I just want to clarify, I don't think, Republicans are this bad or anything. But, at a certain point, it's like, oh, I need to be the reasonable person in the room with Hitler, make sure that someone there, is still believes in human rights. At a certain point, it's like, no, bro. At a certain point, you need to not be in the room with Hitler at all and try to work against him. Like, I'm sorry. Like, at a certain point, you need to go Tom Cruise Valkyrie mode. You need to be like, you need to take a stand, even if taking a stand means you get lambasted. Oh God, and no one likes the Daily Wire anyway. It's just such a joke. It's just such a joke.
On the Hitler thing, I think it is actually good that there were like the Oscar Schindlers of the world, though, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's one thing to remain on the inside and then to do good. But at this point, I'm like, what is the good that Ben Shapiro is doing by remaining on the, by still being coy about how bad Trump is? It's like, oh, don't worry, guys, he's being coy about Trump so that way he can bring Republicans back, to the same thing. He can save the Jews, to Oscar Schindler analogy. But I'm not seeing any Jews that are getting saved by Ben Shapiro right now.
Yeah. I mean, like, my guess would be that he probably just thinks that the conservative movement is so important that he just needs to stand by it and steer it through these hard times or something like that. Like, if I had to guess what he's thinking, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope it turns out all right. Oh, I just think at a certain point you gotta stand up and draw a line in the sand. I really feel like Ben Shapiro has failed to do that. But anyways, that's a long preamble to say I think the Daily Wire could have been a great thing. Now it's just like it embodies all the worst stuff of alternate media, and Ben Shapiro has man, and that's another thing. Back in the day, man, Ben Shapiro had some great criticisms of alternate media. Ben Shapiro was like one of the only people who was honest about alternate media, talking about like, guys, alternate media kind of relies on traditional media to actually do real reporting. We're all just like punditry and opinions and stuff like this. But now the Daily Wire is just like the world. Oh, God. Okay. We need to start the video. I'm going to start the video in 5 seconds.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to read to you today something I've been working on, well, for many decades, I would say, really, but more intensely and specifically in the last 4 months. I reviewed it with a lot of people around the world. It's called a conservative manifesto, and it's an attempt to begin the process of outlining a positive vision for the future on the center, right, and classic liberal front.
Okay, center, right, classic liberal. I'm going to be holding you to that, Mr. Peterson, okay?
I decided to entitle it a conservative manifesto. I played with the title, something approximating a manifesto of canonical Western virtues, but I felt that was a weaker title, and I also felt that it was time to make a statement.
Wait, why would you think that's a weaker title?
Level.
Like, he's the one who's always going around saying, like, what's so wrong with Western virtues?
I don't know, Cricket. I'm gonna be honest. I have no fucking idea.
Let's say on the center conservative side, conservatives are very concerned with tradition and community and responsibility, and those are all virtues and values that have been under tremendous pressure in recent years. And so after reviewing both documents, because I wrote 2 versions, one on the canonical Western value side, I decided that the conservative manifesto title and conceptualization was stronger. Now, as I said, I'm trying to outline a positive vision for the future. And this is a very difficult thing to do. And this is a test case, I suppose, to see how people respond, because I would like people to respond well. I would like to outline a vision that's very enticing to people, that wouldn't require compulsion to implement, that would get people on board voluntarily. And so anyways, this is a metaphysical inquiry. And so what might that mean? You can think about levels of profundity. At the base, the most profound ideas are theological, for better or worse, by definition, because they deal with what's eternal and sacred. On top of that is a metaphysical foundation, and that's where philosophy lies, and then out of that emerges such things as
this is stuff that's true within his framework. It's not stuff that you can use to justify the framework.
Social policy and normative discourse. And so this is a long ways down the hierarchy towards the foundation, but it's time for a discussion of foundational principles. Part of the culture war that's raging around us is, in fact, an argument about cultural fundamentals. And so, well, I'm going to read this. Now, it's long and it's difficult, and I have to read it because it's pushing the limits of my cognitive ability, and I had to write it. I can't do it spontaneously. It's too complex. And so I hope you'll bear with me and you'll find it useful. I suspect it will require
can't be worse than 40K's
several
rules
listenings for people who are really committed to it. And you can choose to be committed to it or not as you see fit. So I'm going to launch into it. And it's titled, as I said, A Conservative Manifesto. That's a play a bit on the Communist Manifesto. This is a conservative manifesto, so I suppose one among many. And I don't imagine it'll be the last word on that front. It's not designed to be a propaganda tool. It's designed to be an invitation.
Wait, really?
Let's say. And so,
how can it be anything but a propaganda tool?
It's a play a bit on the Communist Manifesto. This is a conservative manifesto, so I suppose one among many. And I don't imagine it'll be the last word on that front. It's not designed to be a propaganda tool. It's designed to be an invitation, let's say. And
I think it's just the classic, like, what does propaganda really mean? Well, I think propaganda means, falsehood, or I don't know. I think he's just using propaganda in like the very common parlance where it's like explicitly deceitful.
I guess. I mean, I kind of wish he would just like lean into it and go like, yes, I'm doing propaganda, GigaChat. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
because he is.
Onward with it. A Conservative Manifesto. Introduction. A profound crisis of meaning currently afflicts, destabilizes, and demoralizes the sovereign citizens of the West and the social institutions upon which we depend. That crisis has increasingly spread to the remainder of the world's people, generating confusion and sowing distrust.
I need examples, Mr. Peterson.
I mean, he's kind of doing like a Friedrich Nietzsche bit here.
Productive discord in place of the peaceful voluntary cooperation and competition that could instead reign over and unite us. That crisis is, in the first place, the consequence of a corrosive doubt sowed, not least, by the careless intellect regarding the value of the principles of value, aim, and action that have heretofore inspired, guided, and stabilized us. That crisis is, in the second place,
I really need examples here. What is this crisis of doubt of the principles that have gotten us here so far?
Yeah, I think we know from context approximately what he's talking about, right? This is a guy who rails against postmodernism and leftism all the time. So he's going to say like the postmodern neo-Marxist left has been questioning the values of Western society for decades, and it's corroding everything. Like we know that that's where he's going with it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be there. I feel bad though. I don't want to go after specific arguments when he's giving them. It feels kind of straw-man-y.
Yeah, you're right.
The consequence of the historically unprecedented realization of our ignorance about the ultimate source, nature, and reality of those principles, and our resultant inability to formulate and communicate a clear moral justification for their existence.
That's a really interesting wording. It doesn't sound like he's actually disagreeing there. It sounds like he's actually agreeing that, like, in a way, you can't, like, fully ground out your axioms. I'll rewind that a little bit.
Nature and reality of those principles, and our resultant inability to formulate and communicate a clear reality in place. The consequence of the historically unprecedented realization of our ignorance.
Realization of our ignorance. Yeah, he's like, yeah, we are ignorant in
about the
certain
ultimate
respects.
source,
nature.
nature.
But you know, he's like, because he's religious, his explanation is going to be, but we have God, and that's what rescues us from this. It's going to be, a wizard did it, basically. But.
Those principles and our resultant inability
Shadow Money
to
Wizard
formulate
gang.
and communicate a clear moral justification for their existence. That crisis is in the third place, the consequence of the presumptuous, premature, and finally narrowly self-serving insistence arising from that doubt and ignorance that nothing.
Okay, this he has to be intentionally doing this with the words. He is being so high and mighty, throwing around all these words. I feel like this has to be intentional. I don't.
But the will to power, the willingness and desire to dominate and exploit, motivates all individual perceptions and actions and gives rise to and maintains all social institutions. That crisis is, finally, use of the frustration and resentment that necessarily arises when doubt, ignorance, and intellectual pride combine to demonize, divide, and exploit, to insist upon an impossible and final conceptual certitude, and to demand recognition of a false and unearned moral virtue. That crisis manifests itself in the idolatrous battles, simultaneously petty and terrible, that currently divide our world, in the disputes about identity that lead astray and render hopeless, in the stoking of suspicion between men and women, in the insistence that enmity must divide black, brown, and white, in the subjugation of the education that should enlighten to the ideologies that possess, in the cycle of accusation that threatens the trust upon which peace and prosperity necessarily depends, and in the panicked, anti-human, apocalyptic doomsaying that undermines the spirit of our sons and daughters. What can those of us who attempt
to... What is he talking about? Climate change? I'm not even sure. Anti-human apocalyptic doomsaying. Is he talking about climate change?
I think what he's talking about is he's saying, like, the questioning of all our traditional values has corroded society to such an extent that it's on the verge of crumbling. Something like that.
Yeah, well, because it sounded like he was talking about specific examples. He was talking about manifests in petty battles, and he talked about identity, men versus women, and then he said anti-human apocalyptic doomsaying. So I felt like that was a continuation of that list of, like, it was like a bullet point of examples. You should have to give examples. It should be illegal to not give examples.
Yeah, well, I think what he's saying is like, I think he's using that phrase to emphasize his, purported seriousness about these things. He's like, men and women are fighting so much that it's just, cutting so deep in our society, it's undermining our social cohesion, and everything in our society rests on that social cohesion. So let me tell you how very serious this is. I kind of think that's the bit that he's doing.
Maybe, yeah. I really wish he was a little more concrete with his language.
By and manifest a
you can hardly
faith.
write a manifesto and remain concrete throughout if you're going to try to justify things from, like, first principles, right? Like,
but when you're getting to specific examples, you can still be concrete. Like,
that's true.
Like I've not read the Communist Manifesto, but I would be really surprised if, like, when Marx was describing, like, wages and stuff, he used this kind of language where it's not even clear.
I think Marx is worse than this.
Oh, wow. Okay, never mind that. I just got exposed. Okay, yeah.
It's been a long time.
There you go. But manifestos, folks. Let's get some improvements here.
Yeah.
In the traditional values of our past offer in such times, not the thoughtless and instrumental appeal to cynicism and bitterness associated with the insistence that our social and political institutions are fundamentally unreliable, corrupt, and untrustworthy. Not the harsh and condemnatory exhortation or demand to accept and uphold a moral code, noteworthy only for its joylessness, sterility, and tendency to forbid and damn. Instead, the confident and forthright transmission.
I mean, it's funny because you're complaining about joylessness while presenting in the way that he's presenting right now, right?
This is like listening to a crazy person.
To all of those who currently wander, thirst, and starve in their absence. What are the values of paramount importance to the conservative temperament currently crying out for rediscovery, reconsideration, and discussion? And inevitably...
But there, consideration and discussion. Oh, I thought we were going to consider them, but without a discussion. Why did you add the... Whatever.
Incomplete, but crucially necessary list might include humility, liberty, autonomy, truth, agency, identity, merit, responsibility, tradition, community, stewardship, justice, and unity.
I buy into like half of those.
Okay, yeah, these are okay. We're okay. Humility, that seems good. Liberty, autonomy, truth. I feel like agency and autonomy. You know, we've got a long list here. I wrote them all down, so I feel like we could lose agency and autonomy and maybe just have only one of them. Identity, merit, yeah, good. Responsibility, tradition, sure. Community, stewardship. I feel like that's kind of part of community, but okay. Justice, unity, okay. These seem good.
Might be profitably appended a set of propositions about the true nature and source of absolute privation, the inevitability of economic inequality, and the practical realities of the individual competence upon which psychological integrity and social contract equally and mutually depend.
Well, this is obviously a response to people who complain about economic inequality.
I've got nothing but clap for that. God bless. We just destroyed leftism right there.
Humility is the opposite of the prideful, authoritarian arrogance that insists upon the possession of comprehensive and final skill and knowledge. To revere humility is to accept the insufficiency of current presumption, to acknowledge the value of attending to what is not yet known, to listen to, value, and attempt to truly understand the opinions of others, no matter how ill-formed, to strive to gain further knowledge, and to convince and invite instead of insisting and compelling. Humility is therefore a fundamental precondition for learning, for the revivifying, meaningful engagement that learning produces, and for the maintenance and renovation of what has already been validly learned, established, and universally valued.
No,
that's it? That was it? Are you... Okay, so I'm pretty sure. Hold on. I'm gonna use my speak with conservatives ability. All right, that's my racial ability. I'm pretty sure that he's talking about suppression of speech on social media platforms. When he talks about, invite in, listen to opinions even if they seem ridiculous. I think there is a angle there in relation to COVID policies, talking about to accept the lack of certainty within current presumptions. I feel, this is another reason why you should have to give specifics, is because this idea is now sprouting out into what every individual person hears when they say this. You could interpret this a bunch of different ways. Yeah. And so now you get to everyone gets to map it out. It's like, oh wow, I really agree with this because it's this thing. And now there's no coherency of what is actually even being discussed in this, which makes any assessment or discussion about it just mind-numbingly fucking difficult. Oh, whatever. Anyways, but okay. So I feel like the actual points here are you know what? We should focus more on having conversations than banning speech. I actually tend to agree. Now I think there's a balance, right? Like, probably, I think I'm okay with the social media platforms, banning people that are spamming the N-word. There's certainly some things, but I definitely think we could probably move a little bit more in the direction of less control. When it comes to the lack of, or rather, accept the sort of lack of strength within current presumptions, I'm calling bullshit on this. I feel like this is a thing that happens where it reminds me a lot of climate change stuff, where people that do not believe in climate change or don't think it's as extreme, or people on the right side of the climate, or on the right-wing political side of the climate change issue, will always latch on to, like, none of the strongest arguments in support of climate change. They'll be like, oh, look at what Al Gore said and how his predictions didn't come true. And it's like, bro, Al Gore should have made those predictions, but that is not that is not what actual climate scientists were saying back in 2000. They were not saying that in 5 years, New York was going to be underwater or anything like this. And same thing with, I think there's a lot of similar stuff that happens with COVID. People will be like, oh, look, the vaccines were never vaccine doesn't 100% prevent COVID. No one was saying that. No one was actually saying, oh, it's going to 100% prevent this. So when he says, oh, you guys need to be less certain of your things, it's like, I'm pretty sure we don't. And what you think is, incorrect is actually just total bullshit.
I took a completely different interpretation of that phrase, to go along with what you were saying, like he is being so vague that it's open to a bunch of different interpretations. I think when he says, like, we should be more accepting of uncertainty within the current belief systems, I think he's actually pushing back against leftist critiques of traditional values, where people say, try to, like, ask how he can be so certain of the principles he holds. And he's saying, like, well, I took it as an assertion that we just have to be okay with some level of uncertainty in our values, and not use that as a reason to, like, throw out the baby with the bathwater or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's also probably in there as well. And you know what? That would actually tie back to what he was talking about earlier, where he was almost seemingly, where I made the point, he's seemingly endorsing the fact that there is some uncertainty there. He's saying, yes, that's okay. There is uncertainty, but that's okay. That's okay to have some uncertainty.
Yeah.
I think that's actually, I think you're right on the money with that. That makes a lot of sense to me and lines up with what I think he was saying earlier.
Liberty.
Oh boy.
Liberty is valuable not because it enables the hedonism that heedlessly sacrifices the future and the community to the narrowly conceptualized present and the impulsive needs and wants of the individual. Liberty is valuable because it allows all free and unique people the opportunity to best confront the potential of the future, to engage in the voluntary, productive, reciprocal interactions that make peaceful, mutually sustaining social life possible, to speak the truth that redeems and renews, and to adopt the responsibility of citizenship and ethical endeavor. Liberty enables people to think authentically and without arbitrary constraints, privately and publicly. Liberty allows people to employ that unconstrained, authentic thought to imagine a diverse set of possibilities, to singly and jointly assess, criticize, prioritize, and improve them, and to choose from those diverse, criticized, and improved possibilities the most evidently valuable, compelling path forward.
That's
autonomy.
That was a shitty explanation.
I don't know. This is, like, I think a very good, textbook definition of, like, in the abstract of, like, what people mean when they say liberty. But, like,
I don't think it's that.
I mean, I think it gets there. I don't know. Maybe there are better formulations. But, like, when he says these things, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's liberty. I agree with those. But, like, you're not saying anything. Like, imagine if I had the Democrat Manifesto. The Democrat Manifesto. What do we Democrats believe? Democrats, we believe that you should not kill babies. And you should not murder innocent people. It's like, bro, does anyone disagree? when you phrase it that, when you load it that strongly, I don't think he says, oh, allow unique people to best confront the future. Yeah, I don't think anyone here is like, no, we need to have people confront the future in the worst possible way. We don't need voluntary reciprocal behavior that lets people think authentically without arbitrary consents. Like, no one is saying that. Like, I understand that from Jordan P. Peterson's perspective and from many conservative perspectives, they believe, oh no, there is constraining of the thought, but that is then where you need to have the argument. That you need to then argue over the specifics. Is it, are we still able to think authentically and without arbitrary constraints when, for example, if I say, certain things, there might be social consequences for them, right? So-called cancel culture, right? I think that's one of the big things that Jordan P. Peterson is trying to get at here, right? Is, we shouldn't have cancel culture. But it's like, bro, I don't think that, every interpretation, certainly we can agree some places where cancel culture's gone too far. But equally, like, is anyone out here like, oh, Harvey Weinstein, like, man, you suffer a lot of social consequence if you try to defend Harvey Weinstein. Well, I don't know. That's like a restriction, like, you need to deal with the actual specifics. Because I feel like just pointlessly saying these, like, platitudes of, like, well, freedom of thought is good. Yes, we all agree, but like, what is and isn't freedom of thought, and how does freedom of thought, unconstrained, interact with other people's freedom of thought to think poorly of you? Like, that's like where the actual thing is. But instead, he just says like these meaningless like platitudes that like no one disagrees with. Like, I think we should feed children. Like, damn, that's crazy, bro.
I mean, it sounds like he's using language that's like almost explicitly utilitarian for this, though, right? He's almost like saying we should favor liberty because it produces good outcomes. Like, which is like a strange way to. I mean, it's not strange. Just if any random person. To me. What's that?
I think it's pretty in line with sort of the thesis that he laid out at the beginning, where he's talking about like the values that produce a good society that we need to rediscover.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. It's kind of like it's different from what I would have expected him to say, but I do think you're right. It does like align with his thesis
compared to like liberty for liberty's sake.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It actually, what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Ben Shapiro argument about Judeo-Christian values and how those were very important to forming the Western society that was successful. Ben Shapiro used to, and I believe he still does, although I don't want to make that claim just because I'm not sure. But when I followed Ben Shapiro a little bit more, he would very often talk about how the reason why, liberal democracy is a lot more successful is because of that foundation of Judeo-Christian values. He always viewed that as an argument. So I think it's a very similar thing there. These values are good because they produce the society that this society that seems to work very, very well.
It's really strange like this argument though, where he's saying like liberty is important. Like it almost said, like I'm gonna paraphrase him here. It was almost like because it enables people to like have to exercise good judgment or something. It sounds like that's almost what he's saying. Like because if you were living under some authority that constrained what you could think or say, that would like impair your judgment, and that's the reason why we shouldn't do that. Or I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The emergent problems that constantly beset us. Autonomy. The emergent problems that constantly beset us and simultaneously offer new opportunities can only be addressed by the continual provision of equally unpredictable and variable sets of solutions. Such provision is best ensured by valuing and encouraging development of the widest possible range of productive activities and enterprises, from which variation might be drawn the most appropriate solutions.
Yes.
Jordan Peterson arguing for diversity here, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, yes, unironically. But yes, this is you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. I super agree. Like, how does this relate to the conservative movement? Could you provide an example? Because this one, I'm actually super curious. Like, I feel like I guess maybe just like conformity, like the fact that like, oh, we all need to do the, like, I guess like the only like an example I could think of would be like, the idea that we all need the same COVID restrictions. Well, maybe we should have different COVID, but like I feel like that's a perfect example where sometimes sometimes you do need the same thing. Like, my house, I want to figure out what is the best way to have, what is the best voltage for a house's electricity to run on. you wouldn't have different kinds of voltage running in the same house. Like, that would be an example where, like, no, you actually do need all of the one thing, within a certain unit. And then, arguably because of, the ability to travel freely between states in America, you do need then more of a unified response. But again, this is the problem. It's like, on the one, I feel like I am kind of strawmanning Jordan Peterson here because I actually don't know what he's saying. Like, that's what I imagine he's trying to relate this to. This is, you have to give examples. You have to give examples.
I sort of think that you and I might not be the target audience for this, right? Because a lot of this stuff makes sense. It doesn't make sense from the point of view of somebody who's like, expecting to be persuaded by it, but it does make a lot of sense as apologia from people who are already bought into these concepts. It's just like, I think it's there to just like provide a way to articulate this stuff to people who already believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Autonomous citizens can bring the individual differences of their temperament, experience, and skill to bear on the problem of adaptation itself. Autonomous people and institutions, as widely distributed as possible, are free to vary in their response to the particularized demands of their local environments. From that variant pool, all individuals, free to communicate and assess, can derive the solutions most apt and efficiently matched to their current situations and problems. Widely distributed autonomous local activities allow for the establishment of resilient, large-scale, unified systems optimally resistant to the rapid and dangerous spread of any given unpredictable emergent problem, optimally able to respond with timely and particularized solutions.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like one of the benefits of, like, for example, an example I think where I could agree would be like federalism, right? The idea that states get to have different solutions, right? This is one of the great things that has allowed for legalization of weed in many states across the country. It's the fact that they have the ability to pursue that on their own. And, sometimes it means some states make worse decisions than the average, but sometimes it means that some states make decisions that are better than the average. I don't know. It's just like I feel like it's just like, but like I understand this principle, Jordan Peterson. How do you think it relates to the conservative movement? How do you think that conservatives need to, work on this?
I think this argument that he's making works at cross purposes with a couple of the other principles, right? Because if you really believe in tradition and community, then those things are going to like constrain people to certain thoughts and behaviors and produce more uniformity, right?
Yeah, I'm hoping he's going to talk about then balancing these things because that is what ultimately I think everything is about. Is like the classic is like, for example, a classic thing in cybersecurity is ease of access versus security, right? The easier it is for the user to access, generally, the weaker the security is. So it's about balancing those things. Or in like classic societal ethics, it's like a freedom versus security, right? Giant police state, that eliminates crime, but means we can never do anything we want. Probably not good. But equally, totally free society with no taxes, no police, no cameras, no security cameras, where people are constantly victimized by crime. Not good either. So it's about a balance. But it's one thing to say oh, we need to balance it. It's another thing to actually articulate what that balance looks like. How do you make that evaluation? That's where it really is. I'm hoping to God he is going to talk about that. I'm going to lose my mind if he just explains all of these and says they're good and then moves on.
But I think that is what I expect, and like I would not be surprised if he does make a passing mention of the tension between these two, and does the thing where he says we need to balance these without spelling out exactly how, but or maybe he says we need to balance them, and then he says why we need to balance them, but not how. I don't know. That's what I'm expecting.
Yeah, we'll see.
The principle of autonomy, therefore, enables abundant provision in relation to the necessities and luxuries of life, maximal choice regarding the manner in which that provision will occur, and diverse opportunities for meaningful, sustaining engagement in the voluntary, productive, and sustainable private and social endeavors that best produce abundance and choice. Free markets best fulfill the need for autonomy.
Activity. That's an example. Let's go. Let's go! That was a specific
superiority
example.
to all other known and likely possible systems, given that fulfillment, should be unapologetically recognized and promoted by those dedicated
True.
to the canonical values of the West. No other systems allow for the crucial and ever-changing decisions about what is currently valuable to be made by the uncompelled choice and voluntary endeavor of the widest possible number of people. No other systems allow for the sampling and aggregation of the myriad of widely varying and particularized thoughts and decisions constituted by that free choice and voluntary endeavor. No other system, therefore.
I do think it's a little funny to list free markets as among the canonical values of the West when that's a thing that's been so heavily contested in the West, right?
There's a whole can of worms. I think the argument of like, oh, Judeo-Christian values or Western values, I think it's like a whole can of worms. But like, I feel like it's a pointless battle to fight, because like it is something that I think there are legitimately very good arguments on both sides. It's a difficult thing to ever appropriately categorize, and I think more fundamentally, a lot of times these values are actually good things that help us get to good outcomes. There's just a question of like, would you truly categorize these as like the West? Well, then what would we think of as the West? You know, how do you even try to synthesize that many different countries and histories over such a period of time into one cohesive thing, one cohesive set of values?
I wonder if he thinks these values are such universally good human values that he would also recommend them to societies that are not Western, right?
Yeah, I would hope so. I would hope so.
Does, or apparently can, operate in the manner that makes continued adaptation to the unpredictable horizon of the future both possible and desirable. Truth. The future genuinely and unpredictably differs from the past. In consequence, a continual array of complex and unforeseen problems present themselves before us, demanding redress. A diverse, honest,
problems.
And freely...
He just said problems need to be solved.
I know. The future is different from the past, and problems need to be solved.
That's crazy, dude. That's wild. I had no idea.
The values of the West are so self-evident. That's why these are...
Thoughts pertaining to those problems is the eternal precondition for the possibility of solution itself, as well as for its dissemination. There are many valid, productive, and attractive ways of looking at and acting in the world, and a variety of perspectives is simultaneously necessary, strategically appropriate, and inevitable. It is also forever the case.
Hey, we're still talking about autonomy here.
I
talking
sort
about
of think
a variety of perspectives.
I think he's like mentally really stuck on the like cancel culture free speech thing, because he just seems to be weaving it into like a lot of these different values, right?
I think it's a valid thing to be woven in here, but like this is why, by the way, maybe we should have done a little bit more review about, how many categories do I really need here? Because we're talking about very similar things between autonomy and truth here. Maybe, truncate that into autonomy and then truth go into a separate thing. I don't know. Although truth, it's like, what we need to do, guys? We need to be truthful. Like, who's going to disagree with that, man? Okay, I guess.
However, that disciplined striving in a single direction fortifies and unifies, that an ethic capable of uniting diverse citizens in trust and peace is necessary and desirable, and that truth itself is never to be finally found in a particular set of facts or body of knowledge. The genuine striving forward ethically, instead, is the very embodiment of truth, and therefore the most valid manifestation of truth itself. The humble attempt to advance ourselves and others through discourse as a consequence of listening and spontaneous response is, instead, the very embodiment of truth. The willingness to reach in good faith across the divides of race, sex, economic class, and political temperament is, instead, the very embodiment of truth. The divisive
That last one
insistence
made no sense.
on the
I think he means like in order to access truth, you need to be able to talk to people regardless of, their class, race, or whatever.
Yeah, maybe. I kind of took it as an appeal to objectivity. It is like, because there's this common conservative talking point that the left is so obsessed with, like, splitting people off into different points of view or something like that, and that this is, like, undercutting the idea that there's a shared truth between us, and so maybe that's what he's getting at.
Yeah, I think that's what he's getting at. It's super unclear.
absolute relativity of truth can be combated not least with the realization that truth is a process, not a state. The realization, finally, that
sounds a little postmodern to me.
Life,
I know, right?
Is to be found precisely in pursuit of the truth, constitutes the only real antidote to the corrosive nihilism that justifies deception, hopelessness, cynicism, and abdication of responsibility.
Okay, that is a really positive step. That is the articulation of a specific. Well, not a specific problem.
Specific.
That is the articulation of a problem, of a train of thought that is a problem that this principle is a direct counter to. That's quite good. And I do think there is something to be said for the idea of a kind of corrosive nihilism that does, make it more difficult to get positive progress. I'm reminded of how I think it seems like there's a lot of people, particularly in the younger generations, that think that climate change is like already over. It seems like there's this belief, among certain young people that like, oh yeah, climate change, like I'm pretty sure we've already lost. And that's not true. That is absolutely not true at all. That is just not what the science is saying. Okay.
The most fundamental freedoms upon which virtuous states and polities depend, freedom of speech and thought foremost above them, exist not for the impulsive gratification of momentary pleasures, but so that the truth that redeems can find its living expression.
What does that mean? Kobe Bryant, what the fuck does that mean?
It means he hates cancel culture, I think is what it means, right? Because he's describing truth as like the process of discussion between people with different points of view. And like, I know in the back of his mind, he's like, these people just are trying to have... And
again, I could totally envision a scenario in which cancel culture prevents a process of discussion that makes truth inaccessible, right? Like banning certain discussions about things could, the discussion that could then, reveal truth. But hold on. There was a specific thing he said was the person, but these exist not for impulsive pleasure, but for truth. And then it was like a manifested reality or something. I just want to hear this last part again.
Not for the impulsive
not for impulsive pleasure,
but so that the truth that redeems can find its living expression.
What does that mean? What does the truth that redeems can find its living expression? I actually have no idea what that means.
No, I think it's the thing about like the freedom of speech, free public discourse point is I think what he's trying to say there, because he's he just went on his thing about how truth isn't like a thing that you can finally find in any set of facts. It's instead like it's a process of eternally seeking the truth. And so when he says the living expression of that, I'm almost positive what he means is like he wants people to be more free to engage in like the marketplace of ideas or something along those lines. I wish he would have spelled that out more clearly, but I do think that's what he meant.
I guess like the living expression of truth would be like the implementation of it to like obtain utility or stuff. I guess. Actually, no. That makes sense. That makes sense to me. It's like what you use. Like we discovered the truth about this problem. Its living expression would be the solution to that problem that we now understand because we have the truth.
Oh, I think what he means when he says the living expression, I think he means like the process of discourse that generated the solution is
Okay.
the living
Okay, maybe,
expression.
yeah. Okay, I thought the reverse, but I could see that
He is
too.
being vague, right? So yeah, I could be wrong here, but
Agency. The insistence that we are all most appropriately conceptualized at the level of the group, whether by sexual preference, race, gender, political belief, or ethnicity, provides the counter opportunity for conservatives to reestablish and reinforce the bedrock notion and principle of the sovereignty of the individual, which attributes to each person the capacity to advance and progress in the face of uncertainty, malevolence, and adversity.
See, like, this is something I don't like, just saying the insistence that we are best conceptualized at the level of the group. I mean, not always, but sometimes, yeah, absolutely. You know what conservatives love to conceptualize at the level of the group? Veterans. Because veterans, as the basis for a group, should be conceptualized to a certain degree as a group. Because they, as a group, have done a tremendous thing for us. They have, provided their lives and signed up to potentially die for our freedoms. That is incredibly noteworthy. And some of the problems they face are very much related to that group identity, right? The PTSD, right? Injuries related to their service, the inability to get effective health care through the VA. These are things that conservatives rightly recognize. Sometimes you do need to talk about the group.
And his framework of Western values does rely at least on a historically and culturally defined group.
That's a group.
Yeah.
The community is a group.
Yeah.
So it's like clearly sometimes you do want to do analysis on the basis of the group. Other times not, right?
Yeah.
Other times you don't want to reduce someone to just identity of their group. So sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Right,
but bro,
I think he's doing the anti what do you call it, identity politics. I think that's where
it's just there's not a coherent thought here in regards to, I shouldn't say coherent. There's not a proper formulation here of when should you use group, when should you not? Sometimes it's more to talk about the group, sometimes it's more to not. But he seems to be implying that these people say you should always analyze by the group. First off, I don't think that's true. I don't think people are saying you always necessarily must analyze group first. And secondly, sometimes you should analyze group first. So I'm just curious. I don't know. I wish he had something more substantive to say about when it isn't appropriate.
Yeah, but this kind of thing is why I think this is apologia and not persuasion, right? It's because if you don't need to spell that out to people who are already bought into these values.
Those with truly canonical Western views can as well
truly canonical.
The demoralizing notions of the essential corruption.
Bro, I can just imagine Jordan Peterson, and you go you travel back through time, you try to stop people from developing the terms of agency. Jordan Peterson events. It's a canon value. It's a canon event. You can't alter it. Miguel O'Hara.
Corruption of all human activity and its putative basis in nothing but oppression and compulsion. With the knowledge that the desire to strive forward is in its essential form a manifestation of the spirit of voluntary cooperation, the desire for productive, reciprocal social interaction, and the reality of genuine goodwill. The ambition that overcomes privation and penury, the urge to adventure toward greatness, the desire to marry, the wish to have a family, the willingness to shoulder responsibility. All this is truly and genuinely admirable and worthy of recognition and reward. All this constitutes the basis of any truly stable and desirable state, psychological and social alike, with attendant duties voluntarily undertaken and attendant rewards validly earned and distributed. All this is, furthermore, the most reliable basis for any true sustainability.
Yeah, pretty well good. I don't disagree.
Identity. A sophisticated and adaptive identity is in no wise established through the mere insistence that a felt sense of subjective feeling must dominate and prevail. Identity is instead the result of continual and iterated communication, cooperation, and competition between parents and children, husbands and wives, friends, colleagues, subordinates, superiors, and the present and future selves of sovereign individuals. Identity is, therefore, and must remain, a carefully and justly negotiated agreement between the individual and society at every level of that society. Conservatives.
I think this argument is like really close to being like pro-trans. If your identity is, you know, not primarily just your feelings, but is an evolved construct based on the interactions between, I mean, I think that is appropriate. I think that's totally compatible with trans. You know, I think trans people say, you know, I have this feeling about what my identity should be, what I desire it to be. So, for example, you know, changing how I look, changing by what name people address me, changing me by what pronouns people address me. That is then actually doing the work to change the identity as it's put into practice. That totally is compatible. I feel like Jordan Peterson here is almost making, and again, I'm doing a lot of work here to construct what I think his argument would be in application. But like he would say, oh, well, your identity isn't what you think it is. It's what actually happens. And trans people just say, yes, well, when I say, you know, my identity is what I self-identify as, you know, I'm saying that's what my desired identity is. That's what I'd like my identity to be. And I'm trying to then move my identity in practice versus my identity in the ideal. I'm trying to unify those.
Yeah, I mean, I think where he's going with this, well, okay, he's probably not going to mention the trans thing, but, like, if he did, I think he would be saying, like, well, your identity is negotiated between you and the society you live in, and therefore the society, whatever you think your identity is, like, society is under no obligation to accept your framing of it, in, you know.
I think that's fair. I think this is really close to endorsing a lot of the logic that you use to then sort of justify, I think, some of the stuff with the trans ideology. I don't know, with the trans movement, but I still think you could have a formulation where you say I still fundamentally disagree with that notion of that identity, so I would not want society to change.
It's like, okay, the thing about personal autonomy though is the trans thing, right? It's like, so it's a little bit hard to reconcile that you could think the individual is sovereign over themselves and takes precedence over group identity. Oh, but by the way, the group gets to dictate like the most important aspects of your identity and not like whatever you think it is. I don't know.
Can therefore offer a revitalized conception of sovereign citizenship as the most meaningful and significant form of identity. The sovereign citizenship that makes each person a credit to themselves, a reliable partner in marriage, a caring, judicious, and discriminating parent, a trustworthy and competent partner in enterprise, an active participant in local and distal civic institutions, and an informed, enlightened, and ethical political actor and voter.
I don't really understand what these examples are. I'm going to rewind a little bit. I'm not sure why he's bringing up these examples.
It makes each person a credit to themselves, a reliable partner in each negotiated agreement between the individual and society at every level of that society.
I think
conservatives.
I think what he's trying to say is like if you conceive of your identity as a relationship between yourself and the society you live in, that then you will understand that you know your obligations to the
importance to do those things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can therefore offer a revitalized conception of sovereign citizenship as the most meaningful and significant form of identity. The sovereign citizenship that makes each person
that's what he's saying. Although I don't know why he's saying sovereign citizenship here. That doesn't make any sense to me as applied here. Maybe my brain is just ruined by all those videos of like people talking to cops and the cops like, "Can I have your driver's license?" Like, no, I don't have to give that to you. I'm a sovereign citizen under the Arctic Federation.
Yeah, I don't think he's invoking that concept. But I know as soon as he says,
I don't think he's invoking that concept. But even independent of that concept, I don't understand why he's saying sovereign citizen as I don't understand the deployment of that term, even absent the specific legal concept. I don't think it's applicable here.
Yeah, well, my best guess is that he's gonna believe in some kind of like social contract theory, and that you are sovereign in the sense that you are a participant in this contract that obligates you to these social, something along those lines.
Yeah, maybe.
A reliable partner in marriage, a caring, judicious, and discriminating parent, a trustworthy and competent partner in enterprise, an active participant in local and distal civic institutions, and an informed, enlightened, and ethical political actor and voter. This is all predicated upon conceptualizing and articulating the need for a shift in the Western individual's moral outlook, away from the narrowly hedonistic blandishments of endless rights and externally bestowed privileges. And
I need examples.
Toward the constructive rewards attendant upon a mature sacrifice, duty, responsibility, and reciprocity.
This is in big conflict with some of the earlier stuff we talked about, autonomy and freedom, but go off, King.
Merit. Individuals vary widely in their abilities across the entire range of human endeavor. A small number of highly productive people operating within all domains of human creative endeavor account for most of the production and progress.
Source?
Yeah, Ayn Rand is the source.
I mean, that totally could be the case. In fact, I'm certain there are some industries where that absolutely is the case. But all? How do you know that? How do you know that? You don't. So the answer is you don't. The answer is you don't. You have no idea. Sorry.
Direct relationship, therefore, obtains between the recognition and promotion of excellence and the ability for societies to ameliorate absolute privation, to generate and disseminate creative solutions to new and unexpected problems, to provide opportunity for individual and social flourishing and advancement, and to justly and effectively reward those endeavoring to be productive, successful, and generous. The tight causal connection between merit and consequence means that pure merit can be defined objectively by the ability to undertake the work and build the social networks associated with goals valued by the free choice of actors in the free marketplaces of friendship, community association, consumer choice, employment opportunity, and political decision.
I'm triggered by his use of the word objectively in this sentence.
He's
saying objectively and then going on to use all these terms, the meaning of which is highly disputed. Oh my god.
I mean, I understand what he's saying. He's saying, like, you can objectively evaluate, who is more meritorious because one person, if you're evaluating the merit of someone who creates anvils, and person one creates one anvil a day and person two creates two anvils a day, person two has the merit. But, like, you shouldn't still say objectively because that is implying that then there's, like, some greater moral value to making the anvils in the first place and blah, 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 blah. All of that is to say, you know what he just said? He just said, man, we should evaluate how good people are at their jobs and we should reward people that are better at their jobs. Who's disagreeing with this man?
Okay, I think what he's trying to do here is to contest the sort of equality ideals of the left.
I agree, but, like, bro, like, even you have to go pretty far left to find people that are saying, like, oh, we should not evaluate merit at all. Like people like your average Dem, even a progressive Dem, is gonna say things like, oh, well, the ability of people to be meritorious is dependent on some other conditions, right? So, like, if you grow up poor and don't go to a good school, you're not gonna be as an effective. You're not gonna be as. You're not gonna be. I can't speak. If you go to a bad school and you have a higher likelihood of not being as effective as a worker because you will not be as likely to have been educated as someone who went to a good school. So yes, merit can be objectively measured, but we should try and help even up how people get to the things that enable them to be meritorious. I feel like there's almost no one, aside from some really crazy people that are out here being like, yeah, bro, if you can do my job twice as fast, that means nothing. If all things are the same, but you just do it twice as fast, that means nothing, bro.
Yeah, well, what he's doing here is he's mirroring one of the arguments that you would often hear from like anti-SJW people. They'd be like, we shouldn't do these diversity hires. We should hire the best person for the job. Yeah. And I think he's like basically just trying to echo that argument.
I guess, yeah.
Such merit has been validly, however partially and imperfectly, and must remain the fundamental principle governing selection, placement, and advancement in our social institutions. Responsibility. Every individual requires a purpose to offset the tragedy of life. Every person needs...
Oh, holy base. Let's go. Hobbesian, Leviathan, true as hell. Hell yeah.
something of true value to set against the anxiety, frustration, disappointment, grief, and pain of mortal existence. That purpose is not to be found in the cynicism that too easily replaces an initial naivety, or in a short-sighted, narrow, and reactive hedonism, but in the establishment of the stable, reliable, truthful, and productive intimate relationships, friendships, apprenticeships, civic bonds, political duties, philosophical commitments, and religious habits and practices. In the absence...
I 100% agree. I thought that was great. That was actually some great analysis. I mean, again, we're lacking on the specifics here, but I think I would even endorse that. You know, I do think there is a real dearth of meaning among people that, you know, whether or not it is objectively good or not, it is psychologically fulfilling to people to have, and that the best way to ameliorate that kind of stuff, I'll engage in the Voshisms as well, the best way to ameliorate that problem is establishing relationships with friends, with mentors, philosophical or religious practices. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I'll endorse an approximation of what he's saying. I'm not sure I necessarily want to agree with like every single example that he listed, but the idea that people are happier when they engage actively in their relationships and they live according to their values, like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I do think you hit the nail on the head here, and I do think there is, you know, I don't know if I would describe it as like a massive problem. You know, it's difficult to evaluate the scale of these things, but there is definitely a problem with some people just being super lost in cynicism or short-term fulfillment that doesn't replace the deeper, I think, psychological need for those kinds of long-term relationships that are much more fulfilling.
Yeah, totally agree.
Of the structure and direction produced by such bonds and activities. The tragedy of life.
Okay, now we're going to spend 20 minutes like saying the exact same thing with a different word.
Individuals subjected to suffering in the absence of an orientation towards meaning and responsibility become cynical, unstable, hopeless, and alienated. Then, resentful, vengeful, and dangerous. Conservatives can offer personal responsibility, the committed social bonds of marriage, family, and job, and true civic engagement as valid and reliable antidotes to the nihilism of unearned cynicism, the temptation of narrow short-term pleasure, and the demoralizing consequences of faithless hopelessness. Such advocates can remind us all that sacrifice, the willingness to forestall the gratifications of the immediate moment, the willingness to engage in difficult endeavors in the present, to build something worthwhile for the future, the moral obligation to withstand the trials of immediate, timely disagreement and conflict to ensure a lasting peace, is a laudable, necessary, and ultimately redeeming activity.
If I had to try to connect those things together,
finally,
I think he's making an argument for like long-term thinking rather than immediate gratification. Maybe that's how these things are connected.
Yes.
And like regardless, I think I agree with you that this is among the stronger points he's made. It does make a lot of sense.
So far, I think the strongest by far.
That like a lot of the shallow materialistic values that a lot of people live by really do seem to be detrimental to human well-being, and therefore it makes sense to have some kind of antidote to those.
Define a pathway through the pitfalls of guilt, offering atonement through responsibility as the proper response to the inevitably unequal distribution of talents and privileges. Community.
Atonement through responsibility is a weird way of
The
putting
West
that.
has rightly emphasized the value of the individual, drawing on traditions derived from Rome, Athens, and Jerusalem. The admirably liberal West has properly and usefully articulated a doctrine of individual rights grounded in natural law in consequence, and that has led to an era of freedom unparalleled in its productivity, generosity, and universality. But the highest ideal to which an individual might aspire cannot be grounded in an atomistic individualism or predicated on the assumption that the highest manifestation of human striving be akin to an isolated self-actualization. Conservatives can rightly insist the highest must serve the lowest, communally, in the truly religious sense, can rightly observe that we find our very sanity in relationship to community. Conservatives can note that sanity itself, both personal and social.
This is a reflavoring of the previous argument.
Yeah, I wanted to contest something he said a minute ago, where he was talking about how like the liberal West has produced this era of unprecedented like productivity and universality and stuff. I don't attribute any of that to liberalism. I attribute that stuff to like technological progress, right? Like it just was not possible for our ancestors thousands of years ago to have like a global society on the level of productivity and interconnectedness that we have today.
I think that's definitely a part of it. I do believe there is some intertwinement there, although it is difficult to ascertain exactly how much of it is just industrialization and technology versus how much of industrialization and technology is liberalism. And there's definitely some cyclical stuff at nature here. I'm reminded of I think it's in Civ 4. Once one country gets emancipation, there just becomes like a ramping exponential happiness debuff if you don't also adopt emancipation.
Social is something continually and inescapably negotiated, that there can simply not be the happiness or the pursuit thereof at the individual level.
Okay, yeah, this is
a reiteration.
This is 100% a reiteration. And again, I think it's very true. Community is very important. And the self-actualization, through your relations, absolutely is important, yes. But we just talked about that,
In the absence of the optimally functioning social surround, a purely individual ethos is shallow,
looping all by yourself,
unsustainable, unworthy, and fragile. What do we do when our happiness vanishes? A purely individual ethos fails to provide the orientation crucial for the upward striving that constitutes hope, the integrity necessary to resist temptation, the antidote to the dangerous and narcissistic expansion of ego and presumption, or the bounds of love that support us through tribulation, trial, and tragedy. Stewardship. Those who uphold the conservative ethos can offer responsible stewardship as the appropriate response to the necessity of maintaining harmony in our relationship with the natural world upon which our lives ultimately depend. This is an extension of the proper canonical response to the treasures of the historical past. That which is valuable should be recognized, valued, maintained, guarded,
that which is
and passed
valuable
on
should be
down
valued.
the generational chain. The scope of human activities has expanded in recent decades to a scale that makes of those activities a genuine planetary force. This presents us with real dangers as well as unparalleled opportunities. Panicked,
That would come out pro
apocalyptic
climate change.
in relation to the former
Hold on.
demoralizes, invites a careless and self-serving demonization and derogation, and justifies the kind of impulsive, incautious, reactive, global response that can easily produce unforeseen problems of the same magnitude.
You're just saying that. You can't just say that. It could. It could do anything. Jordan Peterson, the reaction to the lack of meaning and purpose could create a global force that could be just I need examples. I need specifics. I need you to make an argument, Mr. Peterson. Please, doctor. Please.
Do you happen to know what his position on climate change is? I don't know.
I don't know. It's gonna be some shit like, well, what does it mean for the climate to change? No, really, that's a hard question. And who's gonna decide about this thing? Let's and he's gonna do some classic shit like, let's set aside the science for a moment and say hypothetically it is happening. First off, not hypothetically, it is happening, and your side is full of people that just openly deny it and are totally wrong about it. Who's going to be doing this? I mean, what global government is going to, ignoring all the easy solutions that we have that don't require anything like a global government, but whatever. I assume that's what it's going to be. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, because it seems like totally consistent with the ethos he's presenting that you very well could believe in climate change and believe,
it's only America. It's only America where the Conservative Party is fucking absolutely degenerate brain dead on climate change. There's a great poll a couple months ago that looked at how Western developed countries felt about climate change and the difference between their parties. And there was a difference between the right wing and the left wing. Left wing, believed I believe the question was like, what percentage of people that believe that climate change represents a real significant threat to their country? And it was like, the liberal parties were all at like 70, 80%, and then the conservative parties were like at, 50, 60%. Except America. In America, the conservatives were all the way down at the left side, like 20, 30% or something. Yeah, it is totally compatible. I mean, Nixon made the EPA. I mean, that's actually a horrible argument. I shouldn't cite Nixon because he's still part of the post-war consensus and not a real, conservative in the modern sense. But yeah, no, totally. I mean, protecting, you were talking about stewardship, talking about self-actualization. Nature is a big part of that, boys. Nature is very, very, very big part of that. But because, life funny culture war, and in my opinion, because people like Ben Shapiro aren't standing up to the conservative movement and changing minds, they aren't going through, the creative destruction of the marketplace of ideas, we're stuck in this stupid spot.
Greater than the original problem. Thoughtful stewards of the natural world, governed by the doctrines intrinsic to the Western canon, can, as an alternative, recognize the particulars of the problems characterizing the relationship between our industrial culture and the natural world, can confidently note the fact that the human ingenuity most effectively manifested in free societies has and might endlessly and ever more efficiently continue to ameliorate poverty and rectify excessive inequality.
So much amelioration going on today.
This is the left-wing solution, bro.
It is.
You want to know? Yeah. It's funny. It's funny, bro. Because you want to know what's so hilarious? You want to know what's so fucking funny? God, it's so hilarious to me that when Joe Biden does like the biggest climate change bill of all time, people on the left, the Bernie Sanders wing is like, I can't believe, this is not enough. All this does is incentivize people to find solutions, and chip away at, first adopter costs on green technologies to make them more viable for the fucking, private sector. All this is really doing is just incentivizing private companies to do green technologies. And then conservatives will be like, yeah, bro, Biden's going to use climate change to get world government. Like, it's literally, it's literally, you get it from both angles. It's literally leftists will be like, Joe Biden is a conservative Republican. And conservative Republicans are like, Joe Biden is a Maoist in league with Xi Jinping. Awesome. Thank you. Thoughtful stewards of the natural world governed by Western values can, as an alternative, recognize the particular of the problems, can confidently note the fact that human ingenuity most effectively utilized by Western societies can create solutions. Yeah, Jordan Peterson, you know what that's called? That's called the Inflation Reduction Act. That's called bills that as soon as your show turns off and Ben Shapiro's show comes on, he's going to be talking about, well, why are we using money on this? Blah, 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 the deficit, blah, 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 blah. Oh, you have a much greater leg to stand on. Sorry, I said you had a much greater leg. You would have a leg to stand on, because right now you have zero leg to stand on. You would have a leg to stand on if you guys ever did this stuff, but you don't. If you came across the aisle and did cap and trade on carbon emissions, oh, I love me some cap on trade. Oh God, I love harnessing the powers of free markets to efficiently allocate which companies and which technologies are able to efficiently deal with climate change and offset that. Oh God, it's so good. If you guys wanted to do that amazing solution that weaponizes the free market in a beautiful way, that'd be awesome. You don't. You literally don't.
Can encourage conceptualization of the human population and its constituent individuals as a net good in the planetary context.
Yeah, I need you to. Almost no one says this. You're seriously being like, oh yeah, conservatives need to stand up and say that the human race is a good thing. Bro, who do you think is running the Democratic Party? Like, where are the masses of people on the left that are like anti-human, anti-life? Forget even anti-natalists, bro. Like, you're talking about like a borderline death cult. Like, this is just, oh my God, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. It's so stupid.
Can deliver to young people, first and foremost, the message that people of faith, courage, and goodwill can manage the very real problems that confront us and make the future not the apocalypse that is always threatening, but the eternally productive and abundant garden that we may all tend and inhabit.
Cool, that's the left-wing position. Welcome to the left wing, Jordan Peterson. We got a Big Ten energy over here at r/neoliberal. There was one good point he made at the end there, which is the doomsaying. I do agree there is way too much doomsaying on the climate. I mean, I would say the particular doomsaying is not done in the correct characterization. It is still a horrible fucking problem that is one of, if not the biggest problem we are facing right now. So it is very important to fight against. But I can agree that some of the particular characterization is not appropriate. For example, many of Al Gore's predictions are not true. I think I think AOC has said some stuff where she's like, oh, the planet's going to be doomed in 30 years. It's like, this is just not what the science says. This is not what actual scientists are saying. So I can agree there. Everything else you said, that flows af, bro. Judge, circle this on your sheet. That flows af. Okay, these are all arguments to hop on board the Democratic Party. Okay.
What do you mean that flows af? Can you explain what does that mean?
Yeah, basically, in high school debate, there is an affirmative and there's a negative, and when you say an argument. And when you say an argument flows, the flow is your notes, right? My flow is my notes in the round. So when I say this flows af, I'm saying this argument, the net result of this argument is that something in support of the affirmative.
Every individual who strives upward in the optimal and socially beneficial manner deserves and must be granted the benefits attendant upon the consequences of that striving.
People who advance should be rewarded for advancing, should get the things associated with advancing. Wow. Slow claps, everyone. Amazing.
This is the judicious and...
I'm sorry, this is unironically the memes that people make of Sun Tzu. The meme will be like, Art of War, most important military document ever. Try to deceive your enemies. Oh my God. Wow, amazing. I didn't realize I should try to deceive my enemies. He's actually doing that right now.
Well, okay. I think what he's trying to do is touch on this conservative talking point that the left is anti-meritocratic. I think that's what he's trying to justify.
Yeah, yes, I 100%. But Jesus Christ.
Recognition, rewarding, and reinforcement of productive and generous ability. This is the justice that fosters and maintains that productive generosity at the individual and the social level. This is the justice that applies
This is the merit argument again. I don't know why we're doing this again.
Discriminating attention to the endeavors and utterances of past and present and enables constant separation.
Well, it's because the whole point
chaff.
of this is if it's apologia, it's the same thing as when you engage with religious apologetics. It's not actually meant to convince people who don't believe. It's just meant to arm believers with talking points that that allow them to better explain the thing that they're supposed to already believe.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't think this is even really about arming arguments. This is more I think a feels good type thing. This is the kind of thing that left leaning people get, I think, out of watching certain shows Rachel Maddow. No one's getting convinced by Rachel Maddow, but it feels very good as a left leaning person of a certain persuasion to watch Rachel Maddow and be like, yeah, those goddamn Republicans, man.
I think the reason it feels good though is because people want to feel like they have a better understanding of what's going on, that they're like above and beyond what.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's not necessarily about equipping them. It's about making them feel like they're equipped. I guess it's like this.
Yeah, well, and to some extent, this legitimately will equip people because Jordan Peterson, for all his faults, is probably more articulate than an average random conservative. So like those people, if they are looking for ways to articulate the values of their community, would probably be better off just parroting Jordan Peterson than they would be trying to speak extemporaneously.
That's true. I mean, there's definitely still a effect.
This is the justice that has in the past and must continue to be in the future, the irreplaceable, necessary, and corrective complement to what would otherwise be the incautious, too forgiving, and infantilizing universal compassion that too easily masquerades and demands recognition as moral virtue itself. Conservatives can rightly insist it is this true and comprehensive justice, grounded in the irreplaceable traditions of our forebears, that has been and must continue to be both available and applied equally to all citizens, regardless of birth or circumstances. Tradition.
Treat people equal. So true, King.
Conservatives must state with courageous faith and confidence, the fundamental institutions of the West are solid, philosophically and practically. The idea that each individual is equal before the law and of divine intrinsic worth is inextricably associated with the presumption of the sovereign citizen, as well as the associated insistence that the stability of the state rests upon the careful and truthful judgment of that citizen.
Bro, you need to say this to your own side at this point. Like, I'm sorry, bro. It's 2023. Conservatives don't get to keep pretending that, like, the left are the crazy ones who want to tear everything down. At this point, that's you guys. That's you guys saying the FBI is beyond corrupt. You know, the DOJ, the deep state, the swamp needs to be drained. The swamp needs to be burned down. At this point, people are saying stuff like this. Like, you guys are the ones that want to tear everything down. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, their reason for doing that is that they believe that like, society has already been corrupted by the left, and therefore, like, there's nothing to lose by tearing it down or something along those lines. But
the idea that honest and untrammeled discourse among men and women of goodwill constitutes the eternal pathway to the truth that refreshes and redeems is a realization whose profundity of conceptualization and reliability in application is unparalleled in human history. The parliaments, congresses, and senates where those of us in the West transform the inarticulate but reliable and trustworthy sentiments and desires of the people into the articulated body of laws we all abide by, are fundamentally good and functional, but require the wise trust and active engagement that conservatives would do well to embody and promote. Marriage, not sexual satisfaction, is the most appropriate goal for love. Children and adults flourish in stable two-parent families. The broader community is best served by stable marriage and family. The needs of those in absolute poverty are best served by an uncorrupted and genuinely cooperative and competitive free market economy. The very
Okay, we're really starting to wander from, like, philosophical positions of, like, people should be treated equally, tradition is good, to specific things, which I'm not even saying I necessarily disagree with, but you can't just say them. You can't just assert the needs of those in extreme poverty are best served by a free market. Is that true?
Yeah,
I need a source, bro.
I think
like,
he's just
I tend to agree, but, like, Jesus, man.
I think he's just kind of listing beliefs at this point and not even like attempting to give them some kind of like coherent logical structure.
real problem of inequality is best solved by a commendable combination of productivity and generosity within the framework that such structured systems provide. All of this nests within the overarching framework of the Abrahamic canon bequeathed to us by our forebears, and should be presented in a spirit of gratitude and humility as an inextricable part and parcel of that inheritance.
Is
unity.
that true? You're just again. I feel like he's not really making arguments.
A house divided against itself cannot stand. Respect for individual sovereignty, appreciation for the intact family, responsible engagement in civic institutions, gratitude for the traditions that bind us and protect us from chaos, and courageous trust in the essential goodwill of others means unity in both appearance and reality. Conservatives at their best are characterized by profound appreciation for the necessity of such unity, apprehending it properly as the basis for the peaceful cooperation and competition that made, makes, and keeps us strong in the face of both adversity and enmity. Such unity also provides for the psychological and social predictability and structure that keeps the destabilizing terror of uncertainty at bay, as well as for the shared communal purpose that provides the very framework for individual hope. The notion that no such unity is possible, or that it is always purchased through the use of self-interested power and compulsion, means only, in the first case, that disunity and the chaos that accompanies it is inevitable, and in the second, that a profound misunderstanding is in place regarding the causal relationship between true stability and productive peace and the principles of free choice, voluntary association, reciprocal exchange, mature capacity to forestall gratification, and responsible action. The acceptance of these twin presumptions dooms their holder to a counterproductive and destabilizing anxiety and aimless hopelessness and a consequent bitter cynicism, and with no conceptual or practical alternative to the personal wielding of arbitrary force. This is a recipe for personal doom and social catastrophe. Conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, unity is good. But everyone loves to say unity is good, and then when it comes time to unify over things people really disagree about, suddenly no one is so big about unity.
Yeah, well, suddenly now it's the other side's fault for not embracing unity, right?
Yes,
like what?
Yes.
So far, no mention at all of the tension between individuality versus like communal values, right? He just praised each of them separately without even mentioning the need to balance them against each other.
Yeah, I also don't appreciate, again, I think this is the kind of thing, it's like, man, sometimes you got to give your own side, tough love. And a lot of these things he's listening about unity, particularly trust in institutions, bro, you need to talk to the right wing just as much as you do on the left. I mean, it's like, I take pride in the fact that I do not go easy on my side. When I see problems on the left wing, I go hard. And I just feel like if conservatives aren't willing to do the same, we're never going to get past this stuff.
Yeah. Well, he even said the thing about like the institutions of liberal democracy. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was talking about like the kind of like legalistic institutions like parliaments and stuff. And he said these things are fundamentally functional and good. Right here, I'm paraphrasing him, and it's like, wow, if I like it. Like, out of context, it's not super hard to imagine a conservative saying something like that, but when you like juxtapose that against the whole like drain the swamp mentality and the constant like accusations that that our governments are corrupt whenever they are ruled by the opposition party, it's like kind of astonishing that they can hold these two thoughts in their head at the same time.
Yeah, especially in the face of like, what I think is like pretty demonstrably and clearly not what they say it is, right? Like when conservatives are saying, anytime something bad happens to Trump, it's like, oh, it's the deep state that's rigging it. Like the assumption, even as increasing evidence comes out that no, Trump really was fucking up with these classified documents. He actually was doing things that are uniquely bad and, distinguish his conduct from Hillary Clinton in this newest indictment. All the stuff that's coming out here of Trump knowing that the election was not fraudulent and still trying to go after it, and just the insistence, oh, it's rigged, oh, it's corrupt. Bro, you want to talk about inability to come to the middle? You want to talk about inability to, trust in your fellow Americans? Talk to the conservatives, whose automatic go-to assumption is the idea that there is some conspiracy arranged against them, and this is the only possible explanation for why the 2020 election lost, or why Trump has all these indictments coming after him.
I mean, Peterson kind of mentioned here the principle of charity, in different words, right? Like the idea that we should, give credit to the honesty and good intentions of people who were dialoguing with, right? And then to see that alongside the whole like stop the steal movement, it's just astonishing. But I don't know.
Okay, here, let me pop up, or hold on, conclusions.
The blind and instrumental insistence that truth is an illusion and that nothing but power truly rules has left virtually everything of true and enduring use as a guide to purpose and a bulwark against despair abandoned on the wayside. The demoralized people of the West, and indeed in the rest of the world, are therefore crying out for the restoration of the abdicated values of individual sovereignty and responsible, genuine social service and purpose, whose acceptance and embodiment make our free societies possible, productive, admirable, generative, and stable. Conservatives who abide by the dictates of the eternal Western canon have the opportunity beckoning in front of them to once again make the case that the principles upon which we operate, the virtues in which we believe, and the freedom we have been divinely granted, truly and eternally constitute the basis for the life more abundant, which people of good faith desire, and which we have every ability to establish and maintain.
I'm a little intrigued by his wording here. It almost sounds like he's a little upset with the conservatives. He talks about, we have this opportunity before us. It's right there. I don't want to read too much into this. It's possible that he is not saying this, but it almost feels like he's saying, like, damn it, guys, what the hell are you doing? We have these things we can be doing in front of us, and instead we're focusing on, presumably things that are not this. Presumably, we conservatives are doing something else. So super interesting.
Thank you all for watching and listening. I genuinely hope that you find the vision that is beginning to be elaborated in this document compelling and engaging. I'm going to add to it 2 appendices, which I'll tape separately. We'll call them a Conservative Manifesto, appendices, which detail out 2 additional topics, one related to poverty and inequality and their nature and amelioration, and the second dealing with the precise nature of the relationship between personal responsibility and meaningful engagement. And so if you appreciated this first manifesto, then give some consideration to also attending to the appendices.
That second
Thanks again for your time and attention.
Might actually be the thing that I was mentioning a minute ago, where I was saying that he hadn't yet addressed the tension between individuality versus community engagement. Like, it sounds like maybe he's actually going to try to address that in the second appendix. I don't know.
Yeah, let me see here.
Which I hope is this is like, we have 2 videos to go over, and the second one is probably the appendices.
Yeah, I think, I've only got the YouTube video here. Let me just quickly check his actual YouTube channel for videos. Oh, for God's sake, there's just a billion stupid fucking podcasts. Oh, I'm about to sneeze for my cat, too. Look at all his hair. Okay, where is... Oh, come on, man. Vision for Conservatives, Part 1. Here's Part 2. Yeah, okay, so there's only on his YouTube channel the second part. I don't know if this is going to be both the appendices or only one. We'll have to see. Let me pop this back out and set up the stream again.
Hello to everyone watching and listening. I recently wrote and recorded a conservative manifesto and released that on YouTube. These are 2 appendices to that document, which provide some additional information on poverty and inequality and on responsibility and meaning. And so I'll leap right into them with your forbearance and interest. Appendix 1, on poverty and inequality and their nature and amelioration. It is of crucial importance that conservatives understand and discuss the true nature of material privation and the unequal distribution of both resources and rewards. Absolute poverty per se is not primarily the consequence of individual sin or the corruption of social systems. It is instead a brute and irreducible fact of nature. All living things are fated to exert costly effort and garner expendable resources to survive. Thus, the poverty that must be overcome so that privation, pain, and death can be kept at bay and reproduction ensured is not most fundamentally or properly attributed to the exploitation of one individual by another or the corruption and oppression of social institutions. The overcoming of dire want in the first place is to be regarded instead as unlikely and as the direct result of laudable personal endeavor and functional and sustainable social enterprise. All the same is true of relative poverty. The equally brute fact of disproportionate gain and loss is neither attributable in the most fundamental sense to the inadequacies of individual aim or the insufficiency of communal institution. It is instead something deeply and mysteriously built into the structure of natural reality itself, both natural and social. It characterizes the distribution of matter within galaxies. A small number of stars have most of the mass. The movement of water within ecosystems. A small number of rivers carry most of the world's water. The habitation of people within geographical regions. A small number of cities have the majority of people. The severity of natural disasters. A small number of earthquakes destroy the most buildings. And the distribution of natural resources. A small number of oil fields have most of the deposits. The same principle applies.
I think it's very foolish to try and establish this kind of principle through all these examples as like some sort of overarching like thing. If there's a particular thing you want to talk about where a small concentration is the dominant thing, just talk about that. This kind of thing is really intellectually dishonest, I think.
Performance and the receipt of attendant rewards within social domains. A small number of classical composers wrote all the music of the common classical repertoire. Scientific endeavors. A small fraction of scientists publish the majority of scientific papers. A small number of scientific papers accrue the majority of citations. And book sales. A small number of authors dominate the bestseller charts. This inequality exists equally on the production side, in that a small number of people in every enterprise undertake the vast bulk of the valuable work, and on the compensation side, in that a small number of people garner most of the income and wealth. A diverse range of natural processes and every known productive and creative endeavor produces an inequality that must therefore be both recognized and managed.
Can we pause?
Neither the fact.
That's fair. Managing inequality. I think that's a W from Mr. Peterson here. Regardless of, I personally, I don't really like getting involved in like the philosophical question of like, should people be equal? Should they be unequal? I'm mostly just concerned with, how do we make a better society for people in terms of material conditions and stuff. And I think it is very positive for Peterson to at least acknowledge the fact that, traditionally from the right, you'd expect him to be like, oh, who cares about inequality? But he's acknowledging, no, that is something that can get out of hand. It's something to be managed. So I applaud him there.
Yeah, so I've got two things I wanted to point out about all this stuff that he's saying. Well, one of which is that he mentioned poverty as a thing to be ameliorated, right? So at least he is considering it to be an undesirable circumstance that societies need to address, shouldn't just ignore. I don't think
that's very surprising. I think most conservatives would agree.
Most of them would, but some of the more libertarian ones are going to go just like, well, inequality is just the way of the world, and poor people should.
Yeah, that's right. There is that argument definitely does have its a real streak in the libertarian circles.
Yeah, so I'm glad to see him coming out against that, and then then there's another concern I have, which is like, I wonder if he's going to be confusing these two different concepts, right? So like, okay, I'm going to try to explain this with an analogy. Like, sometimes when people are talking about like various social phenomena, and they're trying to say like, is it how much is it biological versus how much is it like a nature versus nurture, like that kind of thing, right? Of course, the answer is almost always that it's both. But when people are making these kind of arguments, I think one of the reasons why I often find the nature arguments not very compelling is because even if a lot of these social phenomena are of natural origin, like they are not instantiated by societies, they are nevertheless things that our societies have power over, right? They are not things that we need to just passively accept, even if they do have some biological natural basis, right? So I hope what he's not going to do is go like, well, inequality is just a part of nature because a few rivers have most of the water, and therefore we should just accept that that we shouldn't try to do anything about it just because it is a naturally occurring thing. I don't think he's going to do that, but I'm a little bit wary of it.
Let's find out.
Of such facts, which are a small fraction of the full domain of such facts, nor the active reference to such facts constitutes any justification for the existence of relative poverty, any more than the fact that absolute privation is justified by the a priori reality of its existence. They are recognized and cited
that sounds a little close to justifying it with nature.
Justified by the a priori
that the reality of
of
inequality
its existence,
and the difficulty of its amelioration is both recognized and taken with sufficient seriousness, rather than, say, attributed unthinkingly and so dangerously to, say, the mere fact of capitalism or the inadequacy of democracy or free markets. It is also true and needs to be said.
I think that's actually a really good point. It's important to look at the specific problem and not just wave your hands at some big boogeyman. That is something that does happen, I think, actually a lot.
Yeah.
That the willingness and ability to exploit, however motivated, and the degeneration and corruption of social systems from the family through the state and church can, of course, interfere with or even destroy the necessary trust and attitudes and practices that underlie a sustainable, productive, generous citizenry and community. But, and it bears repeating, that in no wise means that such desire, decay, and interference is the root cause of the most fundamental economic problems that beset ourselves and our institutions. Individual ambition and action, rightly manifest, and social institution, properly established and maintained, instead produce and distribute abundantly and generously, and are compromised in those functions by greed, resentment, nihilistic faithlessness, and confusion, and the political, economic, sociological, and theological consequences of those pathologies of motivation. The fact
Well, that does seem like a
priori
weakness of those
deprivation.
systems if they are susceptible to common human character flaws, and those common human character flaws interface with such a system in a way that produces like catastrophically large system-wide consequences. Like, I mean, are we going to just not acknowledge that that is a weakness of the system?
Yeah, I think, and again, maybe I'm steelmanning him here inappropriately, but from the way I took that statement to mean was him to say that it's not perfect. The system is still vulnerable to greed and stuff like that. But I feel like he's about to say, but despite that, or I don't know, maybe he'll just go off in a completely different direction.
And the operation of deep laws of unequal production, distribution, and compensation means that individuals and societies alike must structure themselves so that productive people have the freedom to be productive and are optimally incentivized to continue producing. However, it is incumbent upon conservatives to appreciate in the deepest sense possible the catastrophe of absolute need and the danger and potential tragedy and social danger
I think this is what he's talking
of
about.
radical inequality.
With the greed.
To sympathize with the plight of those afflicted by such realities, and to note the danger posed to community order by unchecked disparity of ownership and opportunity.
Okay, well, pretty
Those
good point then.
who abide by
Let's
the
go,
Western
Jordan.
canon
All right.
must therefore support and work for the existence of a plethora of productive enterprises so that many people can strive hopefully for success in many different directions. And as well, must also strive to foster, promote, and maintain an ethic and culture of productive generosity. This best ensures a place for everyone, regardless of the vagaries of innate ability, as well as the proper taking of responsibility for and atonement in the face of absolute and relative poverty. We are all fated to both arbitrary and unequal degrees of deprivation and privilege. Some are born poor, dim, and unhealthy. Others rich in both resource and opportunity, as well as
Others
ability and
become
health.
dim through brain damage.
The proper response to such apparent injustice of placement is, in the first place, forbearance and gratitude manifested courageously. And in the second, cultivation of the desire and ability to employ those unequally distributed talents and gifts in the service of the poor, downtrodden, marginalized, and infirm. Such service satisfies the demands of both conscience and state in the truest and most long-lasting senses. Such service also serves as the most valid and reliable source of the meaning that most truly sustains us all, protecting us from despair individually and collectively as we find ourselves exposed to the dramatic and challenging vicissitudes of fate. It is
The
truly
vicissitudes of
better
fate.
to give
Fucking, I hate those
than
guys
to
so
receive.
much.
And conservatives would do well to balance their demands for liberty, autonomy, and tradition with the pledge to be caring, generous, and charitable.
Here's some of the stuff we wanted on. Okay, that was pretty good. That appendix was, I think, more good than it was bad, actually.
As an ideal to buy into, I think I agree that it's pretty good. Now, of course, telling people that we're going to just have a free market and then expect them to be generous in the presence of it, and that this is going to solve the poverty. Maybe not. Maybe not the most realistic solution to poverty, but it makes sense that he at least cares about the problem and wants to inspire people to be generous in the face of it. I'll give him some credit for that ideal.
Appendix 2 on personal responsibility and the practicalities of meaning. In the absence of deep, sustaining meaning, the tragedy and betrayal that inevitably accompany life undermines motivation, engendering a suffering that can be unbearable and tempting us all toward hedonism, cynicism, hopelessness, bitterness, envy, and ultimately the delights of vengeful cruelty. That meaning has become questionable, not least in the aftermath of the philosophical and theological confusion manifesting itself as the death of God. Young and old alike have become ignorant of their heritage, skeptical of the benefits of adulthood, unsupported in their agency, accused of prejudice and unseemly ambition, and fed a continual diet of apocalyptic doom and historical guilt. They have become, in consequence, dangerously demoralized, despite the wealth and security of the present day and the vast horizons of opportunity now available to everyone. This
is very true. People think that the sky is falling down, even though we live in even though we live in the best times to be alive ever. People do absolutely think the sky is falling down. Now, Jordan, I would love it if we had a little bit of self-awareness here and said that maybe perhaps you have contributed to this. Now I'm not saying you are alone in this. I'm not even saying you are a particular bad one, but I think all media has some blame for this, especially our very hyperbolic social media, in which people select for the stories that are the most, the most climactic and apocalyptic.
unsettling of conditions engenders an increasing distrust as the worth of human endeavor becomes questionable and the motivations of others the target of increasing suspicion. This manifests itself as a dangerous and accelerating polarization as shared aims disintegrate and claims of corruption, exploitation, and victimization multiply. Conservatives can offer not only a philosophical and theological alternative to the deterioration of faith producing such distrust and suspicion, but a practical guide to the ordering of life such that its suffering might remain tolerable and its stability and adventure sufficient. The values of maturity, responsibility, duty, tradition, commitment, industriousness, and civic engagement are now criticized and rejected, deemed anachronistic, even pilloried, regarded as problem, not solution, treated as unvirtuous and exploitative. They are, in fact, the opposite.
Like, who's actually arguing against those virtues? I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is the problem with not giving examples. Is what what he's intending to say is that, when you go after, I'm going to assume he's going to say something like, when you go after marriage or the church or the nuclear family, you're going after these things. Whereas I think other people where I think the people he's addressing would say, well, no, we don't think those are good ways of getting to those things.
Yeah, and like, to give him some credit, there's probably someone out there who actually is crazy enough to present any of the arguments that he's trying to argue against. So I don't want to suggest that people don't exist who make that point, but more that arguments like the ones he's trying to address are so marginal that it makes me wonder why he thinks they're worth his time.
Yeah.
Issues of attitude and habit that stabilize, provide hope, and unify, that offer a true and time-tested and immediately implementable antidote to the enemy of moral relativism, cultural dissolution, philosophical ignorance, and personal confusion. Maturity, sacrifice, and resistance to temptation. The ability to delay gratification is the hallmark of maturity and a crucial part of the process of adapting to the reality of the future, as present actions have future consequences, and to the complexities that emerge from the necessity of adjusting short-term individual needs to the demands of sophisticated social...
You just said that. You just said that the ability to delay gratification is the hallmark of maturity and adapting to the future. Now you're just repeating what adapting to the future means in more words. Stop doing this, man.
This means that we must each undertake to bear difficult burdens in the present to ensure the survival of our future selves and equally and similarly our families and communities now and later.
Very true. Practicing discipline is an important part of willpower. I agree, 100%.
That maturity can well be recognized and promoted by conservatives as the appropriate and admirable goal of childhood and adolescent development, as a state of being preferable to those early stages of development, as a respectable, valid, and worthwhile ambition for development, and as a precondition for the establishment of complex, productive social institutions.
I mostly agree with
Marriage.
that too. Yeah.
He's really light on specifics, like how do we promote this, but
Yeah.
I agree with the goal.
Yeah.
The idea that sexual intimacy is best contained within the confines of a stable relationship, that a man and a woman should come together as a permanent unit, and that children require a minimum of two opposite-sex parents for optimal development, is a notion as close to universally human as any so far discovered.
No, that is not true.
Come on. You can't just say your thing is universal. You know what, Jordan Peterson? The idea that all people should be equal, that's universally as human as something can be. Boom. Just the idea that we need to vote for Joe Biden in 2024, that's just universally human, folks. That's just universally human. So no need to argue about it. Just get out there and do it.
Yeah, and more specifically, like monogamy is not nearly universal, right? Like sure, in the modern industrialized societies of today, monogamy is very common, but historically and cross-culturally, like polyamory is very, very common, and communal raising of children is very, very common.
And something being universally human is not enough for you to endorse it. You know what's universally inhuman? Sin. Sin is universally human. But no one's out here like, you know what? Sin's inevitable, so let's just embrace it, guys. Like, there needs to be a realistic evaluation of whether or not something, if something is universally human, which I don't think it is for this case, even if it was, you then need to have a realistic evaluation of like, well, what can we do? Because just because something is universally human doesn't mean you couldn't, make it less common.
Yeah,
right?
A lot of the things that he's coming out against are universally human too. Like poverty, the questioning of tradition, cynicism. These are, I don't know, they're more universally human than monogamy is.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure, there's lots of things that are universally human that we have been able to put the screws to and significantly combat.
Distributed and established. Marriage provides each individual with the opportunity for true intimacy, physical and spiritual, the possibility of genuine elevating communication and psychological development, a solid platform from which to engage in the challenge of raising children.
His body language is really funny. The way he keeps
satisfaction.
Leaning forward and leaning back. I don't know. I feel like I'm doing it because he's doing it too.
It's like dude, you're getting Karate Kidded. Jaden Smith Karate Kid at the very end when he does the snake thing.
Of engaging in a difficult, worthwhile, mature enterprise. A culture firmly based on the principle of stable monogamy is less prone to hyper-competitive youthful male aggression, often manifested as a consequence of jealousy, loneliness, and existential frustration.
Citation needed, brother.
Provides women with the stability necessary
to... right?
It's very plausible. There's lots of things that are plausible or intuitive that aren't true.
To dare pregnancy and the vulnerability associated with the care of young children, and offers to boys and girls appropriate role models for the development of a stable identity and pattern for adulthood. Conservatives should be forthright in their admiration for and promotion of this most fundamental of social arrangements.
Okay, I feel like this is like the 20th time where Jordan Peterson ends like a statement of like a good virtue and then being like, and because it's good, we need to promote it. Like, I get it, dude. And I don't know, I guess it's a bit of a nitpick, but it's also like, bro, he's just being so overly, feels like he's being so intentionally overly wordy.
Other options,
I don't know why.
However desirable in principle, however associated with some hypothetical utopia, as doomed at minimum to comparative and perhaps unforeseeable dire failure. This does not mean that alternative arrangements, whether formulated by necessity or desire, should be carelessly, opportunistically, or cruelly devalued. It does mean, even given that caveat, that the gold standard of permanent traditional monogamous relationships should be broadly socially recognized and rewarded. Family.
It's funny because he says we shouldn't devalue it, but it should be under the gold standard. Which really gets to the point I was going to make. It's one thing to say, you know what, we should do this, but we should not go into this thing. It's another thing to try and actually have that happen when you put an idea out to the world. Ideologies and thought processes, they're not, civilization video games. When you put them out into the world, they tend to do things. This is sort of the view of ethics of like the elephant and the rider, that a lot of our sort of moral intuition and thought processes are not conscious. They're things that, we can try and put rudders on to steer. And I think that is a thing that is a very true concept. And I think one of the strongest applications is where you see people, is in stuff like this. Man, Jordan Peterson, you can't be like, okay, we're not going to devalue, a woman who has to get divorced from her husband because she's being beaten. We're not going to devalue someone whose parents are divorced. But we are going to say that if you do have two parents and they're both heterosexual and they're together, that's the gold standard. Like, I'm sorry, that is always and inevitably going to lead to that kind of devaluation. It reminds me of like how some people will talk about like, there are really big problems on the left and the right that leave them politically vulnerable. For example, on the right, there's a lot of bigotry against minorities that is very needlessly antagonistic. In fact, man, Republicans would find such fertile ground with lots of more conservative communities of minorities that are traditionally Democratic allies in the Black community and in many different Hispanic communities. For example, Cuban exiles in Florida. But unfortunately, a lot of that progress is hampered by the fact that the Republican Party does have a dark underbelly of bigotry.
Well, they actually do very well with Cubans, though, right? But
Cubans is actually an example where they haven't been able to turn the corner. And it's not to say that, for example, they can't eventually get there, but just it is a hamper. And same thing on the left. The left has plenty of bigotries of its own. Particularly, for example, the United Kingdom, there's a lot of anti-Semitism that runs pretty rampant in the Labour Party and just left-leaning spaces in the United Kingdom that hampers what would otherwise be a much stronger relationship. It's one thing to say, oh, just don't do that. But when you really think about it, it's like, oh, just don't be racist. It's like, it's one thing to say, that's another thing to actually try and implement that thought process on such a huge scale.
Yeah, if I wanted to try to steelman him here, I think he didn't quite say it this way, but you could have a version of this belief system where you say like, here are some values we should have. Here are some downsides of trying to implement those values, and we should be conscious of those downsides and try to mitigate them as best we can. And so maybe it's like, yeah, we should strive to have this type of family structure, and then we just acknowledge that the way that I'm framing this is going to devalue some people, but then you say like, but look, it's bad that this ideal that I'm presenting devalues these people, and we should try to mitigate that.
Yeah, and I think that could be a much more honest conversation. No, I shouldn't say that would be a much more honest conversation. Not to imply that it wouldn't be more honest, but just that I think that'd be a much more fruitful conversation. Mm-hmm. Look, I mean, to a certain degree, the elephant is always going to be pulling you in a direction you don't want to go. But there's definitely things. But if you're cognizant of it and have conversations about it, you can definitely try and have guardrails and stuff. And you can talk about specific actions, right? For example, I think you could draw lines in the sand. Regardless of what we say, I think a hard line in the sand could be something like adoption rights, right? That could be an example of a practical issue where you'd say, it's important for us not to cross this articulatable specific policy guideline as a way to try and as a way to sort of benchmark where that line is and not letting the elephant get too far out of control.
So the stuff that he was saying a few minutes ago about wealth inequality, I feel like that's the closest he came to the guardrails concept, right? It was
very good, I thought.
Hey, it was good of him to at least acknowledge that. I would have liked him to, propose what I think are more convincing solutions, but nevertheless, okay, good to acknowledge and care about the problem. I think a lot of what he's doing is talking about the ideals he thinks we should have and mentioning what is good about those ideals and not necessarily acknowledging the costs of them, right? Because any ideal that you adopt is going to have good and bad things about it. There are going to be costs incurred by a society that values that thing, and I was glad to see him at least like address that a little bit with the free market thing. He doesn't seem to be doing that with any of this other stuff, right? So if you like we were saying earlier, if you promote a certain type of family structure, then that is going to if you consider some families more desirable than others, then it is going to have like these bad social consequences for families that don't fit that structure. And I would have liked for him to acknowledge more of the costs incurred by the values that he's proposing.
A man or woman who has loyal, caring parents, reliable, true, and honest brothers and sisters, and children bonded in love and mutual regard is an individual valued, celebrated, supported, remembered, and respected. We all, therefore, need to be encouraged to work with goodwill and honest courage to value, mend, and maintain our relationships with our sons and daughters, fathers and mothers, and brothers and sisters, to stabilize and strengthen our families, and to make of them veritable pillars of the broader community. Conservatives can and should discuss and publicly and explicitly support the attitudes and actions necessary to foster such familial integration, and should strive to do so in the absence of a compromising doubt or guilt. The actions necessary to unify families and make them strong in the face of adversity are fundamentally akin to those that also make for reliable, productive social institutions at levels of social organization that surround and subsume the intimate and personal. Proper and caring practice at the local level thus properly prepares us all for proper and caring practice among our friends, neighbors, colleagues, and fellow citizens. There is nothing in any of that to justify a corrosive doubt or undermining guilt. Friendship.
It's one thing to say we need those institutions to do this. It's another thing to try and articulate them specifically. And I think you run into the same problem as before. It's one thing to be like, oh yeah, we need the church, man. We need the church and we need families. And it's like, what about those priest rapists, man? Pretty wild, huh? When you have explicit political institutions, they're a lot easier to have minute control over because they're governed by very specific, rigid, dry rules. When you have more cultural practices, it's a lot harder and a lot more messy, I think.
Yeah, another thing I would have liked to see him address, like if he's going to tell us that like having at least one of each opposite sex parent is the ideal situation, like okay, if I'm gay, which I am, what does he think I should do? Does he think I should just not have a family because that's not the ideal environment for a child if I have a same-sex partner? Or does he think that I should just like have children anyway because I endorse his idea that reproduction and family are worthwhile goals, but then I should just do it like knowing that my children are going to be at a disadvantage forever? Like what, this isn't like actionable for someone who doesn't fit into the mold of what he's presenting.
Every individual is well served and well supported by a network of friends united in good faith, aiming at the mutual good, capable of providing reassurance in times of tragedy and betrayal, able and willing to honestly celebrate in times of success and triumph. Such friendships can neither be established or sustained in consequence of dominance, force, and compulsion, but by the spirit of reciprocity and voluntary play, the hallmark of the most productive, stable, and desirable forms of human social organization. People surrounded by friends who genuinely...
Is there anyone who's like, yeah, you shouldn't have friends and family?
I think that people might disagree about the relative importance of those things, and so maybe he just wants to emphasize...
Wow, really? I would not have thought that, but maybe.
Well, I mean, it's like, okay, I think... if you're trying to rail against like materialistic values and like impulsive pleasure seeking, like presumably from that point of view you do see a society that isn't sufficiently embracing like stable long-term relationships between people, right? So then it makes sense to try.
Oh, I see what you mean. I guess for me, I feel like the difference there would be those people don't think that they shouldn't have them, but they're just failing to achieve them for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, because they're prioritizing these other things ahead of them, right? And he's kind of like suggesting
I can see where you're coming from.
That we rearrange our priorities to like recognize the the paramount importance of friendships and family relationships, which I think is pretty based, TBH.
Yeah.
But
no, this is another Peterson W. All right.
But who stand by them equally during times of uncertainty, confusion, cynicism, and despair are in a much more stable position, existentially, psychologically, and practically, are much less likely to drown in chaos, and much more likely to maintain and flourish in an optimal order. Societies composed of individuals ensconced within such friendships are more likely to be stable, productive, charitable, and generous. Employment, work, job, or career is socially valued productive activity, most typically a sacrifice of present impulse to the broader community and the future. It is necessary, to say it again, not because one class or sex or race dominates another, but because privation is the basic condition of life, and effort must be expended to address it. Work is often viewed cynically as a curse or as an
privation
indication
is a synonym of scarcity, by the way.
Okay,
I was indeed make itself manifest
wondering.
in the form of degrading, unsustainable, and hopeless toil.
Man, there's a needle to be threaded here, which is like not everything is, the fault of white supremacy or sexism, and scarcity can just emerge naturally, right? When you see, a difference or a scarcity, you should automatically assume. But it also is the case that the reverse isn't true either, because sometimes it can be caused. Like, for example, slavery. Slavery, definitely not, just random scarcity or conflict events, definitely motivated by one group subjugating another. So it's just like, I feel like it feels like it's just an easy take, which is like, sometimes, these things just emerge, and other times, there is a specific, action by a group as on the basis of their group identity.
Yeah, and the actions of the society that's experiencing these things, like, we can address them more or less effectively. We can fail to address them. We can even make them worse. So we do have power over these things, regardless of whether or not they are naturally occurring.
Yeah. Okay.
Under optimal conditions, however, both psychological and social, work is a blessing. Not simply because absolute poverty can be ameliorated through effort, but because genuine and sustaining meaning can be found in a task well and faithfully undertaken, even at the most basic level of participation in an enterprise or endeavor. Work, properly undertaken, can offer the opportunity for genuine social contribution, the possibility of establishing lasting friendships and working relationships, the opportunity for learning and growth, personal and practical, the provision of rewards attendant upon participation in a worthwhile, valuable enterprise, and the experience necessary for informed and skillful movement forward into broader, more complex, sophisticated, productive, and generous endeavor. Conservatives can make a case for work, can nest that case within their efforts to uphold, justify, and promote free markets, can endeavor to make the rules governing work just and fair and arranged so that commitment, effort, and merit are rewarded appropriately, sustainably, and justly.
Can we pause for a second?
Civic.
I feel like the obvious rebuttal to all the stuff he's saying about work is like, well, yeah, of course work can do all these good things for us, but does it actually do those on average? Like, is it actually serving our population as well as you think it should?
Yeah. I think it's a matter of the implementation. What does that implementation look like?
Yeah.
It is, it's a balancing act. Work is good, but sometimes you want regulations to make sure kids don't end up in coal mines.
Well, the children yearn for the mines is the problem
True.
too.
True.
Engagement. The stability of state and country is, in the final analysis, dependent on the integrity of the individual and the family. The local civic level functions as a necessary intermediary. Participation in small-scale local institutions, which is often where real, valuable, and necessary communication and change occurs,
Let's go.
Another
Spitting fire.
necessary precondition for psychological health, social unity, and productive peace. Sports teams, book and drama clubs, charitable foundations, business organizations, political parties, and churches, synagogues, and mosques all offer social value and the sense of genuine contribution that interpersonal communion and mature and voluntary service to others inevitably provides. Conservatives can remind the alienated and lost that the many serious problems that need to be solved and the many enjoyable games that could conceivably be played provide a horizon of opportunity dependent only on pure willingness to engage. Conservatives could invite the disaffected, young and old alike,
that's quite a
to make
condition
their
to
services
just hand
available
wave away, though, isn't it?
so that the community could benefit.
If everything he's proposing is contingent on people's willingness to engage with it, then the fact that those things often fail to happen, I don't know, says something.
This is the problem with trying to get people to engage locally. Is there's just not a desire to do it, and it's a really hard thing to address. I don't blame him for not having a good answer, although I would still like him to acknowledge the problem and not pretend like it doesn't exist.
I think he is.
I should say pretend like it doesn't exist, but just not acknowledge it.
I think he is acknowledging it, though. But yeah.
Those offering welcomed, recognized, and valued. Accomplishment. Ambition, in the highest and truest sense, is the motivation to move forward in the face of difficulty, disappointment, frustration, privation, tragedy, betrayal, and malevolence, and to engage in life courageously, honestly, productively, and generously. This is the wish and the willingness to develop genuine competence, not the striving for narcissistic self-gratification, and not the expression of the will to dominate, exploit, and oppress. The desire for accomplishment is, in its deepest manifestation, the motivation to first see and then traverse the path that provides the best for all at all levels of ability and opportunity. It is the instinct to engage in and value such accomplishment that is part of our most admirable moral sense. Ambition itself, seen in this light, is nothing less than the entirely admirable desire to reduce unnecessary pain and suffering, to promote a sustainable happiness, and to create the wealth and prosperity that makes for security, opportunity, and further adventure. It is better to give than to receive for these reasons, as well as those previously delineated. And the purest and most admirable form of accomplishment is more for all, in a manner simultaneously just, sustainable, and generous.
Just make it just, sustainable, and generous, guys. Forehead.
Every person does not have to participate in every social institution or social action, but it is a rare person indeed who can live without a degenerating misery and cynicism in the absence of all activities and social bonds. This does not mean that creative exception, even rejection when required of certain otherwise self-evidently necessary social norms, is either unnecessary or without value. It does mean, however, that the creative production that does not merely and heedlessly decimate and destroy must be undertaken within a broader framework of shared assumption, perception, and action, of shared bedrock value. The conservatives desiring to uphold and promote the canon of Western values can therefore offer to all those who are hopeless and lost, even if they are truly exceptional, the purpose, adventure, and support to be found in striving forward in all these varied domains of traditional endeavor. That practical orientation and accomplishment constitutes the most reliable bulwark against the oft otherwise demoralizing tragedies, betrayals, disappointments, and grievous losses that characterize human, all too human, conception and existence.
I actually super agree. I feel like we're basically just repeating the earlier point, but I super agree. If you don't have these kinds of healthy human connections with your friends, with your families, it is very easy to fall into a very dark place. And it is super important to not just do those for yourself, but to make sure that you live in a kind of society where people are going to be able to get those. And I do think there is a real problem with that today. So I think this is, I think he's just repeating an earlier point, but it remains a point that's very, very true. I think this is one of the big problems with social media, is that social media replaces a lot of those more genuine connections, where people end up spending all their time on Twitter and Reddit, on Facebook, on Instagram, and there's a sort of double effect where firstly, the things they're getting on these places are not good, right? We know these social media algorithms are designed to make you feel bad, to make you feel the very strong emotions, because that's what keeps you on there the most. They've done experiments where, if you have 10 people give you a compliment and one person insults you, you remember the one negative thing more than the 10 positive things. And the social media platforms are just that principle basically put on steroids, and this is why there is such a glut of people. In fact, I think I've got a couple in my chat here that think that the sky is falling down, that think that, the West is falling, that everything is being destroyed, despite the fact that, objectively, we live in the best time ever in the history of the human race. So there's that first effect. Being on social media, you're eating bad things. But the second effect that is much more pernicious, and I think potentially even worse, is the fact that you're then being deprived of good things. You're not just eating unhealthy food, you're no longer eating healthy food. And you don't have those very important and vital human connections that are super important for your psychological health, friendships that have ups and downs, good parts and bad parts. I don't know, and I don't think anyone knows truly what it is exactly about those relationships that are so much better. If we could isolate that, then maybe we could, improve our online relationships such that they were more healthy. But for the time being, as long as we don't know how to get there, and only that these real relationships, these real physical, in real life relationships do have this, it is super important to make sure that as a society we're still having that stuff. It's one of the reasons why I'm a big, I'm very sympathetic to lots of the arguments about restricting social media for children, for young people. I think there's a real trouble in implementation of that. If you want to truly keep children off social media, you have to implement things like a government ID that you use to access the internet, and that's something that's very unpopular in America. So as long as we can't do that, we can only really do pathetic efforts where it's like, click this box, are you 18, or parental controls. I also have some hope that as parents, we are now getting children that are raised by parents who themselves grew up with social media from the very beginning, and I'm hoping that's going to be a real 2.0. And there's always also the possibility, as Jordan Peterson mentions, this is how we solve most of our problems as a human race, is that we invent something, we come up with something, right? The analogy I always use is that if social media were cars, we are at the stage where we still haven't invented seatbelts, right? And maybe just around the corner, there is some invention that we can't fathom of now, but will immediately be an obvious, simple thing that massively reduces the unhealthy aspects of social media. But until such a time, I think it's a really important issue that does not get enough attention.
So I'm not so sure what I want to do about this, but like you, I do very much agree with Peterson here in his description of the problem. And one thing that people often say about Peterson is that he does have his area of expertise, and when he speaks within that area of expertise, he has a lot of good things to say, and most of the garbage stuff that he gets criticized for is stuff that he says when he's swerving way out of his lane. And this stuff that he's saying right now is very much in his wheelhouse. This is like Peterson, displaying the best of his competence.
Yeah, 100% agree.
That practical orientation, provision of hope, and stabilization serves as the genuine antidote to the despair and bitterness that can undermine all hope, engender a cruel and vindictive resentment, and dangerously destabilize and threaten society itself.
Very true.
Thank you all for watching and listening.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
I've just read the appendices to A Conservative Manifesto, a document I read on YouTube and wrote over a period of a few months. I hope that you find the information that it contains and presents helpful and hopeful. Thank you very much.
So I like a lot of the ideals that he put forth here. I think the type of society that he wants to live in isn't terribly different from the type of society that I'd want to live in. I wish he was a little bit better about spelling out how to get there in a way that I could get on board with.
The devil's in the details.
Yeah, I mean, and that's often the way with conservatives, right? Is like it's not so much
just with issues in general. I mean, I think like what you're talking about is super true, and it reminds me of, I think, such a tragic fact is that we are simultaneously very divided right now, but we really aren't. We are divided in, we are more divided now than we ever were before. But under the hood of that division, there's still huge unity, right? Democrats and Republicans aren't talking about wanting radically different things. They just disagree on how to get there, right? They want what is best for people. They want, the things that are, they want children to get good education. They want people to be provided for and cared for. But the devil in the details is super important.
So if there's one good thing for people to take away from Peterson's views here, I would say it's like you really do need to care about your connection to your personal relationships and to your community. That stuff really is important for your personal well-being. I'm glad to see him kind of coming out against the sort of like impulsive materialistic aspects of our present day culture. That's the stuff I can get on board with him with. I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to add, or do you?
No, I don't think so.
You want to shout yourself out before I'm done?
Yeah, twitch.tv/Flowtrace. Twitter.com/Flowtrace. I'm also on kick.com/Flowtrace. I believe this Friday I'm going to be talking to Sock Done Left on Wick's panel, interrogating him about some issues. Counterpoints is going to be there. A bunch of people are going to be there. I think it's going to be kind of Sock Done Left versus the world. So that's going to be really interesting, and I'm looking forward to it. I think he is a very, very strong debater and a proponent of his points. And I disagree with him on all this stuff. So I am really looking forward to that engagement because I always enjoy talking to people that really can push me. And he's definitely been able to push me very hard. He really knows his stuff.
All right, sounds great. Yeah, thank you for joining me. See you later.
See ya.